Well, good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to the Balsillie School of International Affairs, and a welcome to everybody who's gathered here tonight for this very important and exciting event. I would like to begin by acknowledging that this lovely building sits here in Kitchener-Waterloo, located on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We are grateful for all the Indigenous people who continue to care for and remain connected with this land. I would also like to acknowledge the presence and support of Canadian Commission for UNESCO, Sébastien Goupil, Secretary-General, and Liette Vasseur, President. I would also like to welcome Natural Resources Canada's Sean Tupper, Associate Deputy Minister, Vic Pant, Chief Scientist and Chief Science Advisor, and Rory Gilsonen, Director General, Hazards, Adaptation and Operations Branch, Lands and Minerals Sector. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Councillor Debbie Chapman from the City of Kitchener. The Balsillie School of International Affairs is very proud and privileged to host this event tonight, and I am indeed very honored and privileged to serve as MC. My name is Anne Fitzgerald. I am the director of the Balsillie School of International Affairs. We host 3 postgraduate programs here at the school: a Master's of International Public Policy, a Master's of Global Governance, and a PhD program in Global Governance. Through the work of our research clusters and situated in the heart of a very intellectual square mile of institutional capacity, we serve as bridger of different groups across the STEM and arts and humanities disciplines to bring a truly multidisciplinary approach to address some of humanity's critical problems and critical challenges. We're delighted to host the UNESCO Chair of Wilfrid Laurier University here at the Balsillie School. It will contribute richly to the work of the Balsillie School moving forward, and I'd just like to speak about some of those contributions. It will speak directly to the mission of the school by taking an innovative approach to creating sustainable food systems and exploring new solutions to the critical problems which are encompassed in food systems, including biodiversity, climate change, food security, justice, and human health. The chair's work is highly collaborative with a broad network of Canadian and international academics and practitioners that cut across the boundaries of discipline and practice. And lastly, the UNESCO Chair is a real opportunity and platform to bring about change and enhance the quality of people's lives through the transformative nature of food. I would now like to pass the chair to President of Wilfrid Laurier University, Dr. Deb McClatchy.
Thank you very much, Anne, and good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to join you tonight to celebrate the launch of the UNESCO Chair on Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies. As president of Laurier, some of my greatest pleasure comes from being able to highlight and celebrate our world-class researchers. Our researchers make outstanding contributions to global knowledge, and Dr. Alison Blay-Palmer is no exception. In fact, she is a perfect example. In her effort to build a more environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable food system for the planet, Dr. Alison Blay-Palmer embodies academic and research excellence. I also know her to be a wonderful colleague, mentor, and student supervisor. Dr. Blay-Palmer's work with the Laurier Center for Sustainable Food Systems and the Food, Locally Embedded, Globally Engaged Partnership has earned more than $10 million in research investments by, for example, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council and the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. It has also forged research alliances with academic and practitioner communities across Canada, Brazil, Ecuador, and Kenya. Now, as a UNESCO Chairholder, Dr. Blay-Palmer and Wilfrid Laurier University have an opportunity to further broaden the scope of these connections and work with many more institutions across the globe to address the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals related to hunger, gender equality, and climate change. This is a proud moment for the Laurier community. Tonight, we come together to celebrate the possibilities the future holds by forming a deeper understanding of biodiversity, food security, and sustainable development. But as we are all aware, progress is not a solo endeavor. The benefits of this partnership won't be confined to Dr. Blay-Palmer and her research colleagues. This research and its outcomes will extend throughout our campuses, where they will inspire future-ready students, academics, and communities of practice to make even more connections and advancements that enrich our thriving community. Thank you, Dr. Blay-Palmer and Secretary-General Goupil, for this incredible partnership which stands to move Laurier ever closer to our goal of inspiring lives of leadership and purpose. This is truly an exciting time, and I, for one, can't wait to see what happens next. Thank you. I would now like to welcome Dr. Jonathan Newman, VP Research at Laurier, to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. McClatchy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Secretary-General Goupil, Deputy Minister Tupper, friends and colleagues. It's a real pleasure for me to be able to offer some remarks this evening. As Vice President Research, my responsibilities encompass all research activities at Wilfrid Laurier. Dr. Blay-Palmer is, of course, one of our superstars. But more than that, she's a keystone researcher that connects, bridges, and adds enormous strength to our broader university research foci. In particular, Dr. Blay-Palmer's research sits at the nexus of our strengths in the environment, governance and policy, health and well-being, and culture and society. Her work encompasses the interaction of environmental factors, human populations and conditions, along with the management of the environment and other key policy issues. She brings a climate change, resilience, and sustainability lens to our research, which complements the work conducted by other Laurier researchers in, for example, the cold regions and water research, and at both the Canadian and global scale, including sustainability and healthy aquatic and coastal ecosystems. Her work bridges that of the Center for Cold Regions and Water Science and the Laurier Center for Sustainable Food Systems, almost as if we planned that. The public policy challenges confronting 21st century society remain problematic and include issues relating to international, political, economic, and developmental relations. Dr. Blay-Palmer's research seeks to understand these challenges and increase our capacity to deal with them. Her work connects with food security, human rights, justice and equality, social activism, social welfare and community development, advocacy, and policymaking of all kinds. Alison, leave something for others to do. Dr. Blay-Palmer's relationship with the Balsillie School of International Affairs and the Center for International Governance Innovation helps her to leverage her work to a global impact. This work builds upon a global network of researchers and community partners dedicated to improvements in food systems, health, and well-being. The challenge of understanding the human experience has cultural, scientific, artistic, and humanistic dimensions, requiring a range of integrated skills and approaches across all faculties. Interdisciplinarity is integral to Dr. Blay-Palmer's impactful and transformative research. There is no doubt that Dr. Blay-Palmer's research has had global impact, But her commitment to social justice and human rights starts with local communities. She works to build capacity in these communities, including increasing access to healthy food and increasing community resilience. 2 weeks ago, President McClatchy and I were in Yellowknife, where we have a research partnership with the government of the Northwest Territories. While we were there, we also had a meeting with the mayor of Yellowknife. During that meeting, we talked primarily about the work that Dr. Blay-Palmer and her team are doing in the city of Yellowknife, where they are currently partnered with the Yellowknife Farmers Market, the Yellowknife Food Charter Coalition, and other partners to make the case for a local food strategy for the city of Yellowknife. She's also working with the Fall Harvest Fair, the Yellowknife Community Supported Agriculture Supper Clubs, the Side Door Resource Center, the Center for Northern Families, and on. With help from the government of the Northwest Territories Anti-Poverty Fund, her team is working with youth and young families on cooking classes with nutritious, fresh foods from the Northern Farm Training Institute and the Farmers Market. Her team has facilitated the What's Your Recipe for a Better Food System, a community engagement event towards a food policy for Canada. They work with Ecology North, the Boreal Garden, Yellowknife Health and Social Services, and the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. And this is just a fraction of the work that Dr. Blay-Palmer and her team do. It's local, impactful, and it makes a difference in the lives of the citizens of Yellowknife. And she translates and scales up this kind of passion and dedication to regional, national, and international contexts. For all of these reasons and many more, Dr. Blay-Palmer is an outstanding choice for the UNESCO Chair in Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies. I'm confident that she will do great things, and I look forward to working with her over the coming years. Congratulations, Dr. Blay-Palmer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Newman. It's now my great pleasure to introduce one of our guests, distinguished guests here this evening, Secretary-General Sébastien Goupil. Secretary-General Goupil was appointed as Secretary-General of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO in 2016. Prior to his appointment at the Commission, he served in a role as Acting Corporate Secretary and Chief of Staff to the Librarian and Archivist of Canada at Library and Archives Canada. He was also the first male to sit on the Executive Committee of Status of Women in Canada, where he led policy and external relations, has served as a Director of Policy and Governance in Portfolio Affairs at the Department of Canadian Heritage, and in other senior advisory roles, including at Citizenship and Immigration Canada. Secretary-General, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Welcome, the floor is yours.
President McClatchy, President Vassar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, bonsoir. I'm truly pleased to be here tonight alongside our Commission's President, Liette Vassar, a UNESCO Chairholder herself, to celebrate what you should all consider a significant accomplishment, the launch of a new UNESCO Chair in Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies. It's always an important moment when we welcome someone new to our eminent Canadian UNESCO family, and I'd like to start by extending my heartfelt congratulations to you, Dr. Blay-Palmer, and to Wilfrid Laurier University. You can be very proud, as you said, President, of this major achievement. I also wish to acknowledge that this very special event is taking place on the Alderman Tract, the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. I also acknowledge that this gathering place is home to many other Indigenous peoples. As you may already know, UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It was created after World War II to rebuild the world's educational system and foster human and intellectual solidarity. Its overarching goal, of course, is world peace. And it works towards this lofty goal through initiative in education, the sciences, culture, communication, and information. At the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, we work to carry out UNESCO's mandate and priorities here in Canada. And fortunately, we are supported in our efforts by incredible networks. UNESCO chairs are among the indispensable network with whom we have the privilege of collaborating as a commission. They work tirelessly to help UNESCO tackle some of the most urgent issues we face as humanity, such as the ones relating to biodiversity preservation, food security, and sustainable development. Put in simple terms, UNESCO chairs help find solutions to complex, critical global issues that no individual institution or country can solve on its own. When UNESCO first created the Chairs Network 28 years ago, its vision was to build bridges and promote international cooperation among and between universities, communities, researchers, policymakers, and civil society broadly. The global network now includes more than 700 chairs in 116 countries. The 27 UNESCO chairs we now have in Canada are particularly active in this network. The chairs continue to be created to help UNESCO sharpen the focus of its efforts. UNESCO gives them a unique role in fostering intersectoral relationship. UNESCO expects them to co-create new forms of knowledge and teaching programs, and also expects them to build capacity through various North-South and South-South partnerships. The UNESCO chairs have special significance in Canada because our commission played a pivotal role in the creation of this international network. Over the years, the Canadian chairs have built an outstanding reputation. They have proven to be incubator for excellence and innovation. Their dynamism and leadership remain an example for UNESCO and its partners, and I have no doubt that Alison will help us maintain that reputation for excellence. As for the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, our ongoing role is to support application for and renewal of UNESCO chairs. We ensure the independent peer evaluation of all chair projects to ensure their goals align with UNESCO's priorities, including achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This rigorous process is necessary to ensure that projects are worthy of contributing to UNESCO and the broader UN system. Our commission will continue to work hard to better showcase the contributions of the chairs and highlight the uniqueness of this prestigious network within the research ecosystem in Canada and in the world. There will be multiple opportunities over the coming years to work alongside Wilfrid Laurier to demonstrate the very relevance, value added, and impact of Alison's new chair. Alison, I'm already quite impressed by the work you are advancing with your students and your partners. I definitely look forward to our close collaboration. Once again, accept my congratulations. And I would now like to introduce Liette Vasseur, our president at the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. Liette is also, like your president, a professor of biology at Brock University and a member of the Environmental Sustainability Research Center. She holds, as I mentioned, a UNESCO chair in community sustainability from local to global. She's going to say a few words about what it's like to be a chairholder based on her experience to date. Liette, over to you, and thanks again, everyone.
So thank you, Sébastien, and good evening, everyone. I'm really pleased and excited to be here tonight for this special occasion. As mentioned, I'm a UNESCO chair on community sustainability from local to global. And as initially a biologist, now working a lot in social sciences, I can see that my work is to mainstream biological and cultural diversity in building partnerships for change, where all ways of knowing are respected and valued. Thanks to my experience in this role, I've developed a keen understanding of both the challenges and the rewards of being a UNESCO chair. I can tell you that UNESCO and its partners think of Canadian chairs as role models. We are known to be highly active in our international network. We provide leadership. We embrace opportunities to work with other chairs around the world. We support them and we guide them. As UNESCO chairs, we act as think tanks and we help build bridges between our academic world and those who are working hard at the grassroots level. I'm not too shy to say that we continue to prove our usefulness every day. As chair, we guide policy decision, we develop new educational initiatives, and we enrich university curricula. Over the years, we have become key actors in the United Nations system. We add our voice to discussion of priority issues and help UNESCO and the UN family in their work. One area that I believe we are currently making a significant contribution is in accelerating the implementation and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, UNESCO chairs in Canada are working on reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, promoting sustainability in UNESCO Global Geoparks and Biosphere Reserve, confronting climate change, and conducting research and taking bold and concrete action with local communities. We also cooperate on education and knowledge sharing, both nationally and internationally. To give a few examples, this work has enabled me as a chair to become more involved in sustainability research and development projects, especially in rural and Indigenous communities on sustainable agriculture and climate change, and not only here in Canada, but abroad. To support my university, so Brock University, in establishing new programs, graduate programs in sustainability science as well as applied ecology, and to encourage youth and women to become more involved in research for education. And finally, to contribute to the network of UNESCO chairs in Canada and abroad on gender equality and sustainability, and even build capacity within other influential networks such as the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, here in Canada, but also in Africa and in Ecuador. So this work takes time, but I find it extremely interesting, rewarding, and impactful. And I'm in good company. In my experience, virtually all the chairs are equally passionate about contributing. I have no doubt that Alison will feel the same way and will waste no time in making her own mark as a chair. In fact, Alison, as you know, has already many great projects and initiatives. For example, she's the founding director of the Laurier Center for Sustainable Food System and FLEDGE, the Food Locally Embedded, Globally Engaged Partnership. In this role, she looks at sustainability of food from biophysical, cultural, and economic points of view. This work is already international. With the creation of the new UNESCO chair, Alison will be able to expand its reach. We can look forward for more international partners, especially in the South, as well as Indigenous communities in Canada. Alison is also gifted with an aptitude for building partnership and inspiring people. The evidence is in her vast personal and professional networks. I'm sure she will be incorporating her insight that she gained through this work into her role as the chair by defending UNESCO values and pursuing opportunities around the world. I would like to leave you, Alison, with two pieces of advice. The first one is never hesitate to use your designation as UNESCO chair. Use it to convene various partners, promote reflection, and broker knowledge and advice. And second, regularly communicate with UNESCO regarding the ways that you're fulfilling your mandate. Speak about your work and your efforts. Don't wait until the last minute to tell the stories and your accomplishment. On personal note, I'm looking forward to start collaborating with you, Alison, as we have common interests. We have discovered that a lot today regarding knowledge mobilization, climate change, sustainable agriculture, and food security. If I may speak for the other UNESCO chairs, we are looking forward to working alongside Alison and offering her both practical and moral support as we all strive, in fact, to uphold UNESCO values and make real change in the world. So Alison, please accept my warmest congratulations. We know that it's going to be just the beginning of a long and productive collaboration and friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Liette Vasseur. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, to introduce the star of tonight's show, and somebody who I'm very proud to call my colleague, Alison Blay-Palmer, the newly named UNESCO Chair on Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies. Alison is the founding director for the Laurier Center for Sustainable Food Systems and a professor in Geography and Environmental Studies at Wilfrid Laurier University. She has been a fellow here at the Balsillie School of International Affairs since 2015, when she was named as a CG chair. Alison's research and teaching combine her passions for sustainable food system and community viability through civil society engagement and innovative governance. She regularly collaborates with academics and practitioners across Canada and internationally. Her collaborative, cross-disciplinary SSHRC partnership, titled Food, Locally Embedded, Globally Engaged, or FLEDGE, as we all refer to it as, gained national recognition in both 2012 and 2019 as one of 3 nominees for the SSHRC Impact Award. Other ongoing research projects partner with the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, RUAF, an international organization focused on urban agriculture, and CIRAD, a French agricultural research center for international development. Alison has also been a member of the Royal Society of Canada's College of New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists since 2016. Dr. Alison Blay-Palmer, it is a distinct honor and privilege to welcome you to the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you. This is really a wonderful moment. Hang on, sorry, I got my clicker, I'm all good. Okay, there we go. While the world faces many problems, as of this evening, there will be one important new contributor to solutions. Based in Waterloo, we now have more resources, goodwill, and connections, along with the support of one of the most important global institutions. Welcome to the launch of the UNESCO Chair in Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies. This chair can help bring about change if we all work together, which is why I've titled this presentation, Food Systems, Putting Together the Pieces for Sustainable Transformation. What I will do over the next 20 minutes is talk about how having more sustainable food systems, including the protection of biodiversity, can help address some of the most pressing issues of our time, and also build stronger, more resilient communities. We're at a crossroads, and food systems can help us go in a more positive direction. Food is at the root of several global challenges. Biodiversity loss is both caused by and challenges food production. 75% of land and related ecosystems have been altered by human action, including more than 35% by agriculture. The loss of pollinators puts $577 billion in crops at risk every year, and food production has decreased on 23% of cultivated land. On the health side, while we currently produce more than enough food for everyone on the planet to eat a healthy diet, the system is not good at getting healthy food to people who need it. So there are more than 820 million people who are food insecure. This is especially tragic as we know poor nutrition causes 45% of deaths in children under 5, which represents 3.1 million children every year. Worldwide, this is linked to where you live, as statistics tell us that poverty rates in rural areas is more than 3 times higher than in urban areas. For climate change, we know that up to 37% of human greenhouse gas emissions are linked directly to the food system through things like food waste, deforestation, the use of chemical inputs, and transportation. So while food is a problem, clearly, when we flip this around, we can also see that food can help offer opportunities for positive change. Part of this change can come from doing many things at once. As The Economist recognized last month, there is a growing awareness around our biodiversity crisis and the interconnections with food, health, and planetary well-being. As they point out, humans rely on there being a diversity of plants and animals in order to feed themselves. Indirectly, this biodiversity is also a key contributor to health through medicines, which are often inspired by molecules found in nature and other basic needs, such as clean water. This points to the potential for adopting a systems approach to cross silos and sectors. The quotation on this slide and the next one come from a book called Bending the Curve and get at the heart of the message about what we want to do through our UNESCO chair. First, climate change is a major problem for all human beings, so everyone on the planet is in this together. Second, the solutions are within reach. Knowing that we have the tools in our toolbox to address challenges like climate change is key, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. It's also important to consider the second point, and that is climate justice is a set of global responsibilities towards those who are least responsible for causing climate change, but most negatively affected by it. Using tools in our food toolbox, at the UNESCO chair, we are looking to help achieve climate, biodiversity, and social justice. For example, we know that if we give women farmers the same resources as men, the number of hungry in the world could be reduced by up to 150 million. And we also know that using ecological growing practices can have many benefits. For example, by slowing organic carbon losses in soils and by using plants to capture and store carbon. So what possibilities does our chair in food, biodiversity, and sustainability studies offer? Well, one can adopt an optimistic attitude and trust that technology or other interventions will resolve the climate and other crises, or be pessimistic and decide that things are basically hopeless. I prefer to be a possibilist and see how to address challenges we face using the tools at our disposal. Given the impacts that I've just described of the global food system, and that we do have enough food to feed everyone, what we need to work on is how to get food to the people who need it, while also protecting biodiversity and dealing with climate change. The UNESCO chair can help move us toward the needed transformations through many possible pathways. We can use a systems approach to learning and research and integrate across silos. We can document good practices and lessons learned. We can build networks to share this knowledge and build sustainable regional food systems. And through new integrative educational programs, we can teach people about how to make this happen. And this is also a benefit as it can help move us increasingly towards the achievement of our UN Sustainable Development Goals. So where is this change happening? Fortunately, we don't have to look far to find outstanding examples with transformative potential. What I'm going to describe next are some projects that we're partnered with through the chair and existing foundational research that we used in our application for a UNESCO chair. The chair will allow us to better build and connect these initiatives, as Liette and Sébastien have both pointed out. Now, I'm putting people on the spot here, I'm going to mention a few names as I go through this presentation, and we have a reception afterwards. And I know that a lot of people in the room are interested in speaking to the people who are doing research on these topics. So if you don't mind just raising your hand when I mention your name, I'd really appreciate it, okay? Thank you. So first, let's go to the Northwest Territories, where Andrew Spring and his team, including Carla Johnson and Neela McLeod-Farley, are working with communities on traditional food systems in the context of climate change. In Kikisa with the Kagitu First Nation, and in Delaney with the Tsatsue Biosphere Reserve, where Great Bear Lake and its watershed are critically important to livelihoods, culture, and spiritual well-being. In both communities, we are supporting initiatives to address climate change through traditional knowledge systems, including on-the-land camps, where elders can share their knowledge about traditional food systems with youth, and mapping projects that document and track landscape change. Based on this work, knowledge-sharing networks are bubbling up where growing food is being explored as a complement to traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering. This work is synergistic with the research by Jen Balzer and her team on permafrost change and forest fires, and the work by Deb McClatchy and her lab on fish populations and contaminants in northern lakes. We also have an active partnership in Brazil with Embrapa, a national research organization, state universities, the UNESCO Chair in Cultural Diversity, Gender and Borders, and farm associations and cooperatives in and around Curitiba. Similar to the Northwest Territories, this work also supports knowledge sharing, this time between a network of small-scale family farmers where they develop agroecological practices related to the conservation of soils, biodiversity, and water, and as you can see in this photo, includes grazing animals in forests. This photo on the bottom shows farmers learning each other at a field school in one of the forests where yerba mate is grown. As these farmers explain, we recognize that the UNESCO project is important for family farmers in valuing our knowledge and traditional practices, ensuring their continuity in future generations, and our empowerment and autonomy in terms of food security. The continuity of these traditional systems guarantees the ecosystem services that family farms provide, such as clean water, biodiversity, and carbon capture, as well as the ability to maintain sustainable production in the face of climate change, thus ensuring the resilience of communities. Dr. Erin Nelson at the University of Guelph is a central partner for the chair. Erin also has close ties to agroecological work here in Ontario, as well as in Cuba and in Mexico. Shared priorities for her research are the empowerment of women and capacity building, as well as farmer-led research and knowledge sharing. In Cuba, a participatory breeding program started in the early 2000s now includes 45 municipalities in 10 counties. In addition to preserving diverse local food sources, the programs also provide increased employment, household income through women-led micro-industry projects and facilitation of commercialization opportunities. Back to research that's happening here at Wilfrid Laurier University, Dr. Edward Shija from the Chepo Research Institute at Laurier Brantford, with colleagues from the University of Zimbabwe, conduct research that integrates Indigenous and community knowledge systems into the school curriculum. The goal is to contribute to three things. First of all, educational policy change, the development of sustainable knowledge for community capacity building, and also communities that can produce and share knowledge on food production and preservation, as well as on the sustainable use, protection, and management of land. This is really important as research shows that ecosystems and biodiversity are much better protected when local communities are involved and their Indigenous knowledge systems are validated and legitimized. Their research in Zimbabwe continues to promote equity and social inclusion for Indigenous communities and students, and also promotes intergenerational knowledge exchange, such as the work that's also happening up in the Northwest Territories, as they too work with youth, women, and community elders. Lane Young, a PhD student at Laurier, is doing work exploring urban agriculture in and around Quito, Ecuador. Lane is looking at women who grow and market food and their power and equality based on intersectional considerations, including gender, race, class, and ability, and the relations between the global north and global south. Closer to home, we have formalized a partnership with Alternative Land Use Services, also known as ALICE Canada, where people commit to sustaining agriculture, wildlife, and natural spaces for all Canadians 1 acre at a time. ALICE positions farmers as solution providers through agricultural stewardship on their marginal and sensitive lands. ALICE invests in farmers and ranchers who are producing acres of clean air, clean water, wildlife habitat, and other ecosystem services in communities across the country. This work is synergistic with the urban pollinator work by Jennifer Marshman at the Laurier Centre for Sustainable Food Systems. To date, the ALICE program has been taken up on over 25,000 acres by nearly 1,000 family farms in 6 provinces. The people at ALICE Canada are excited to work with the chair to explore ways to take this innovation to the international community. In addition to supporting change in communities, we're also developing new tools to help benchmark and understand what changes are happening and how, and to enable transformation. Urbal is one example of the tools we are working on. The Urbal project is developing diagrams, so sort of process maps, like the very complicated diagram that you're never supposed to put on a slide. And what we do with these diagrams is capture how innovation is happening, the good practices and the lessons learned, the changes and impacts created through our work that we're doing in 10 cities across the world. This diagram is an example of one of the outputs. It was developed with a school food program in France that delivers more than 22,000 school meals a day. It maps out their change process, including how they're making their food supply chain more sustainable and localized, and how they're providing sustainable food education to their students. Urbal maps, okay, you're gonna have to bear with me here, I'm a technological, oh, there we go, okay. So Urbal maps the innovation process that starts here with interventions. We talk about the changes that happen, and then we identify the impacts that are taking place as a result of a project. Another example that we're working on is in Berlin with ECF Farm Systems, which is an aquaponics project that produces both protein in the form of fish as well as greens. Ecologically, the benefits include closed-loop cycling of water and nutrients, reduced food miles as fish are raised and sold locally. Economically, the project is connected to a national grocery retailer, so it has a reliable regional distribution network. Socially, the goal is to provide healthy food locally as well as job opportunities. ECF Berlin produces more than 30,000 tons of fish per year and 8,000 plants per week. Urbal is helping the firm look at its impact on food distribution patterns as well as food security. We also work with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and an international global partnership on urban agriculture called RUAF to develop resources that support sustainable city-region food systems. The city-region food system approach includes urban centers, the surrounding peri-urban and rural hinterland, and together, this makes up, as you can see here, the regional food shed. It uses a food system approach, so it includes stakeholders that start all the way from production, go through processing, marketing, retail, and consumption through to waste, and also looks at the exchange and flow of people and ecosystem services. The first phase of the project helped us understand more about the importance of engaging stakeholders from across the city regions, so starting in the city and working out to the rural areas, to identify and support change. Phase 1 resulted in a toolkit that's available online, and you can see the landing page there, that helps city regions assess, plan for, and support more sustainable city region food systems. A second phase of the project is underway to help city regions be more climate resilient. This is increasingly relevant as 70% of cities worldwide are at risk of or are already dealing with the effects of climate change, including stressors such as rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns and sudden shocks caused by flooding or heat and cold waves. There's a pressing need to strengthen the long-term resilience of food systems, and this project is moving us closer to that direction. And what you see here is a photograph from an urban agriculture project in Antananarivo in Madagascar, and it's a way of holding down the soil and also acting as a place where water can go in times of flooding. We're also unfolding this project in Tamale in Ghana, Melbourne in Australia, and Colombo in Sri Lanka. This is the last project that I have time to share. There's more that we're doing, but I have limited time. So what I'd like to do now is talk to you a little bit about this project, and there's some students in the room who are involved in this project, so if you want to wave, that would be great. I'm pleased to share that we're getting set to launch our Climate Change Champions web platform for the region of Waterloo. This is an initiative to crowdsource stories about how people are dealing with climate change right here where we live, to share them on the web, and to profile the most innovative stories about champions through local media. There are several categories, including food and biodiversity, and we hope that these stories will let people know how they can be part of positive change and inspire them to action. In addition to research and work in communities, we work hard to communicate what we do. We share what we know in many ways, through open access books, presentations, reports, journal papers, videos, and digital stories, and I now, thanks to Liette, have many more ideas about how we can do this better. Most recently, thanks to Amanda DiBattista and Lane Young, we have a podcast called Handpicked Stories from the Field. There are now 3 episodes that explore different aspects of sustainable food systems, and we invite you to check them out. We will build on this podcasting capacity with others. In a new partnership with Rongo University in Kenya, we plan to launch a series of podcasts and radio broadcasts that would reach an estimated audience of about 1 million smallholder farmers in Migori County. We also have similar plans with our partners in the Northwest Territories. In Kenya, we'll work with women and youth farm associations to identify knowledge gaps around sustainable food production. In the Northwest Territories, we're looking to explore questions about food growing options. And then using our existing knowledge network that we have through projects like Fledge, we're going to be developing radio and podcasting content in response to these community questions. On the education side, we're committed to launching a graduate and professional studies program by 2023. This will include in-class, hands-on learning in the field, along with online learning. We hope to be able to offer through this program scholarships for students in the Global South so we can get good partnerships built in that way. In addition to the obvious links between these projects, such as environmental stewardship, including biodiversity protection and carbon sequestration, building community capacity and resilience, supporting women, Indigenous communities, and youth, and knowledge collection and sharing, we can now think about connecting the dots between these projects and how the SDGs bring together the work we're doing. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals and commits to end poverty, hunger, and inequality worldwide by 2030. These goals were agreed to by 193 countries in 2015 at the United Nations and are important as they provide a guiding star we can aspire and work towards. The UNESCO Chair in Biodiversity and Sustainability Studies can help meet these goals. SDG 4, Quality Education, and SDG 5, Gender Equality, are being addressed through more sustainable food systems in our projects in Quito, Cuba, and Mexico, and our new project in Kenya, which target women and also use field schools to share knowledge and good practices between farmers. Several initiatives, including our work in the Northwest Territories in Brazil, support youth and enable knowledge sharing with elders. Food systems also link to SDG 13, Climate Action, SDG 14, Life Underwater, and 15, Life on Land. There are many ways through our partners in Brazil, Cuba, and Mexico, and here in Canada with ALICE, the EFAO, and in the Northwest Territories, where we're helping to improve soil quality, protect biodiversity, preserve and improve water quality, and sequester carbon. And this has the added benefit of building community resilience. Finally, by supporting information sharing across all of these projects, we are contributing to SDG 17, building partnerships for the goal, as we build linkages between communities. This also supports building constructive global governance, a core part of the vision here at the Balsillie School of International Affairs, and central to the work of our doctoral students Joanna Wilkes and Carla Johnson. Through the projects and tools I have described, we are fostering improved networks and learning, excuse me, sorry. Thank you, sorry. Through the projects and tools I've described, we are fostering improved networks and learning that can enable greater impact and lead to transformation. I would now like to thank everyone for their support, especially my family, Walt, Jonathan, Christopher, Hannah, and Lawrence, as well as friends, colleagues, and research partners. We are especially grateful for the support of Wilfrid Laurier University, as well as the teams we get to work with at the Balsillie School of International Affairs, and all the people who have worked so hard at the Laurier Center for Sustainable Food Systems. Thanks especially to Heather, Amanda, and Elena. We would also like to acknowledge our new family, the UNESCO system, which I was so delighted to get to have a preliminary conversation with today. Thanks to our UNESCO partners, in particular the Canadian Commission, Sébastien, I look forward to working with you and Liette as well, and your team in Ottawa and beyond. We would also like to thank and recognize our community partners, and of course, and our other university partners. Without all of you, we would not be celebrating the launch of the UNESCO Chair in Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies. This work happens as we all work together. I will leave you with words from physicist Hans-Peter Dürr. In our interconnected world, there are no parts, only participants. We invite everyone to work with the UNESCO Chair in Food, Biodiversity, and Sustainability Studies to enable needed transformation. Thank you for being here to share this important occasion. We now have a few minutes for questions, and then we will move to the lobby for our reception. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, sorry, Anne.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Alison. I would like to invite anyone who would like to come and ask a question to please do so. We have some roaming microphones. I believe, Heather, do we have roaming microphones? Or stand up? All right, so please come. If need be, we'll take questions by group.
Everybody just wants to go and celebrate. That's it. Fair enough.
Let's have 3 token questions.
Thank you. That was very interesting, Alison. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your work in the Global South and in the North in Canada, and what you see as sort of similarities and differences, and how you think something like this, these partnerships and the research piece can help link that together.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, that's a great question, and I really think that this chair is an opportunity to help us do that even more than we're already doing at the moment. Right now, we have been making connections between the work that's happening in the Northwest Territories and also most recently in Brazil. So we actually had a field school experience where we had people from the north go down to Brazil, and it was very fruitful in terms of demonstrating how things work in a different place for people from the north to go down to the south. And the opportunities are wonderful because it gives people new ideas by exposing people to new things, but it also allows people to build partnerships and networks, and also to build some understanding that they're working together on common challenges, and that some of the solutions may be different, but the challenges are shared. So having these opportunities for knowledge exchange are really important because they let people understand that they're working on similar challenges and that there are solutions that they can think about that have been developed in other communities. And the UNESCO chair is going to allow us to expand that network and increase that learning opportunity even more. As we heard today, there's an extensive network that we're now going to be part of that's really wonderful and that's going to let us expand that work out. So I don't know, Liette, if you have any examples from your work that you'd like to share about the South-South or North-South?
Oh, if you want. I should say that I started with my UNESCO chair in China. And interestingly enough, we started collaborating with people in South America, and especially in Ecuador. And gradually it led to a South-South-North agreement. So we're working as a triangle to bring especially some of the sustainable agriculture methods that we're using, either in Canada but also in China, to bring that to our partners also in Ecuador. So what is nice with the UNESCO chairs is this possibility to try to really share the knowledge and bring some of the practices that we have in some places, try to adapt them, because they are not necessarily just to transfer them, but to adapt them in the conditions that they have. I should say that what is nice is also to see how some of these communities can really embrace the capacity to really mobilize themselves in trying to really enhance their own sustainability. So that's great for that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, firstly, I'd like to say congratulations. This is very exciting. Secondly, my question is around, and any one of the four of you can answer this, do you have any advice or direction for young people coming into the field, or even just people who are maybe looking to switch into the field, where to get started if you want to make impact and don't have these kinds of extensive networks? Where do you think we should begin? How do we even approach some of these problems? I'd love to hear what any or all of you have to say.
If you want to give us your email address, we can be in touch with you through the Laurier Center for Sustainable Food Systems. There are lots of opportunities for students through the work that we do. As you have heard, I tried to engage with some of the students in the room. We have, through the class that I mentioned, we're developing the online platform. So we're all about engaging with the community, but also engaging with students. So we would welcome your participation. And in general, I think that there are many ways that people can become involved. So there are lots of different community groups that are doing great work. There are amazing associations that are working on all of these different issues that I talked about. It's great to see you out here tonight and being active and engaged yourself. So, yeah. Sébastien has...
Yeah, probably because yesterday, and Sébastien, you were there, so we had the youth climate conversation at Brock. And it's interesting, at one point the students were like, exactly what you said, you know, how can we do that? How do I reach others and all that? And at one point, one of my students said, but you know, you don't need to have an official network and an official group. You may want to start with a few people and, you know, one afternoon, once in a while, you do something and you try to bring other people. So sometimes very small movement. And if you think about Greta Thunberg, it's pretty much what has happened. So it's sometimes just a question of how do we try to do it ourselves first. And I should say at the Eco Summit in Halifax in 2000, I introduced one thing. I said we should stop talking about the NIMBY syndrome, not in my backyard. We should probably start with SIMBY syndrome, so start in my backyard. and that will probably help quite a lot.
One of the advice I have as well for youth is don't wait to be invited at the table. Invite yourself. Every week I come across outstanding young leaders. They bring to the table great ideas. They are very innovative. And I'm always surprised by those who take the risk of even calling me directly or sending an email. They are asking advice as to where they could go to engage. And what I realize is those who really end up accomplishing themselves are just those who get through the doors. They don't wait to get an invitation, and that's my advice to you. There's lots of potential in your generation. You get it. You understand that we cannot wait for tomorrow. Action needs to start today, and just do it.
Questions over here?
Oh, thanks.
First of all, I'd like to echo the congratulations to Alison. This is really very exciting. And I'm very impressed by the diversity of the projects, and in particular, the way so many of them link urban and rural, and the role of cities and how we need to connect cities with the areas that are producing our food. And I wonder if you have any comments about how you go about thinking about making those connections.
Yeah, I think I don't need this. I just realized, sorry. Yeah, I think that's a really great question, thanks. And it gets at the heart of really what's fundamental to the work that we do, which is building relationships. And the fundamental thing that we learned through the Food and Agriculture Organization project we were involved in was the first step was to build an effective task force that crossed the boundaries of the food system, so started in the rural, moved across the peri-urban into the urban, and got people talking across those boundaries. And when you were able to enable those connections and start those conversations, people can start to identify shared challenges, and then they can start to talk about how to solve those problems. But it's really initiating those conversations that are important. And I think that's really what we're all doing here, is enabling those conversations. And it's particularly important because when we think about things through a food systems lens, we really want to be thinking about where the food comes from, how it gets into the city, how it's consumed, and making that as closed loop, as much of a closed loop as possible. But the underlying human relationships are really critical. So it's looping everything. I guess it's looping people, it's looping resources, it's looping all kinds of things together to make it work better.
Yeah, it's a question for Dr. Blay-Palmer. Preface it with two observations. The first is from an international report I cited recently from about 2015-16. I can't remember the title of it, but some big international study that pointed out that some 100 global corporations are responsible for 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The second observation is one that's been repeated by Greta Thunberg and George Monbiot of The Guardian and lots of other people, even from fairly mainstream sort of sources, that to combat climate change effectively would mean addressing the global economic system, which is a polite way of talking about capitalism, right? I'm not making you responsible for global capitalism, but I just want to ask you, because I'm really genuinely interested, how you see your research, your body of research, as in relation to those large structural political economic forces that, in a certain sense, stand against you. How do you see it, your work, in relation to that?
Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack. And it's something that we think a lot about. And it's why we do work at the international level through organizations like the World Committee on Food Security, for example. But we also realize that the change in a lot of ways is going to come from communities and from individuals. And so at the community level, we're interested in supporting, for example, cooperative movements and opportunities where there are alternative, maybe economic models that can be used to do things in a different way. But the thing that we're going to need to do is to solve these problems, we're all going to need to work together. And I think we need to find a way into having conversations that allow us to engage across a broad spectrum of private, public, and civil society, and bring all of those people to the table together so we can solve this as quickly as possible, because time is of the essence. We all know that. And we all have to, find where those possibilities are for change, and look for opportunities where we can build synergies together. And I think, I'm not seeing, is Catherine from Alice or Brian here? Catherine, hi. I think that there's some good opportunities through Alice Canada, for example, that works across many different kinds of farms to provide opportunities for ecological stewardship and for people to participate in the system regardless of the kind of production system that they have. And I think that that's a really inclusive, wonderful model that we need to be thinking about as we look for solutions across the board. So you're absolutely right, it's the challenge, it's the big challenge for sure. Because as I said, we have the tools in our toolkit. So the question is, how do we get them out there so that they can be applied more broadly?
Firstly, congratulations. And my question is, from your experience in different Canadian communities that you've experienced, what does Canada need the most in regards to policy change?
That's a big question too, my goodness gracious. I think again, it's about building relationships and breaking down the silos. I think if we can get people talking across departments, I think that that's very helpful. And actually, we are privileged to have people here from the Canadian government and from Natural Resources Canada, NRCan, and we were having a conversation just before the evening got started and thinking about how forestry is being done differently and how accessing different resources within Canada is being done differently in some cases and can be done differently in other cases. So I think it's really important for us to figure out how we can learn from each other, what our goals are. I mean, we have the Sustainable Development Goals that we all want to achieve. We know that. So the question is, how can we all take what we know, put it together, and work together to enable the change that we need to have happen? And that's really by understanding more about what we all have to bring to the table and by crossing the boundaries so that we can speak to each other about what the possibilities are.
Okay, well, it seems my only task left is to bring this very exciting, important event to a formal close. I would like to thank our distinguished guests from Wilfrid Laurier, from Ottawa, from Kitchener-Waterloo, and UNESCO. Most of all, I would like to thank our colleague, Dr. Alison Blay-Palmer, for really being the brains and the power behind this exciting inaugural event tonight. To thank all of you for coming to the Balsillie School this evening, and to invite everyone to partake in some drinks and refreshments in the Balsillie School lobby. Thank you again.